All right, welcome everybody to our 8th episode of the Marshall Way Network. We're glad you're here on this Friday night. I don't know about you guys, but here in Branson, Missouri, it's been gully washing and raining, so our internet is a little sporadic, but we're hoping that it sticks out or sticks in so that we can continue the episode today. So if we do cut out, don't worry, we'll be right back. So we're going to start off here with our topic. So that the biggest thing is we are focused today on empowering words and actions, and then tips to inspire others to do their best. And for me, empowerment is such a very strong, positive word. And Marshall Way is all about helping others to be better people. Whether you're a martial artist or you're not, you're just jumping on here to learn about how to inspire other people with your words, then I want to encourage you to look at the word empower. And the actual word empower means to make someone stronger, to make them more confident, especially in controlling their life and claiming their natural God-given rights. So, if you as an instructor, or you're teaching someone, or you're working with somebody, or maybe you're mentoring somebody or assisting, if you're not helping to make that individual more confident, stronger, and feel like that they can accomplish more in their life, then you're cutting them down and you're doing them a disservice. I truly believe that. So every day when I go into the dojo, I think about, am I going to inspire the people that I'm working with today? And I may not, be on my top game when I first arrive, but shortly after I get there, I put in my mind, no matter how hard my day's been earlier, I put in my mind that my goal, my whole vision for being a teacher and instructor is to inspire and empower others to have a better life. And pretty soon everything turns around and that comes out. I believe it comes out of my teaching. If any of my students are out there, they'll keep me honest on that. So I'm going to dig in a little bit, and then we're going to hand it off. We've got some great people here on the call. We have Mr. Roach, and we also have Dr. Leach. If you haven't been in on our other episodes, both of these gentlemen are incredibly talented martial artists, and you can learn more about us. Our biographies are actually on MarshallWayNetwork.com. So I'm not going to actually read through the biographies again today because I've done it on every episode. But I'd like you to go out there and visit and learn about who we are, what we do, and what we stand for. And the biggest thing that we stand for is the Marshall Way, which truly means improving one's life and the life of others. And that's why we're here. So I'm going to start off with just the first question that we had for today's episode. And if you're not familiar with what questions and what topics we're going to cover on MarshallWayNetwork.tv, I listed a number of questions there that we hope to cover today and to help you in your life. So the first question is, what is the biggest secret to empowering others? And I don't know if you've thought about that or if you have an idea or a guess. I will encourage you, there is a box below this Hangout or episode in which you can actually type in and interact with all of us here. So be sure to type your questions, say hello, so we know that you're out there and you're watching our episode. So the biggest secret to empowering others is to have a positive attitude. It's true. I mean, think about all the great instructors and people that has come into your life. The ones that stand out, or the ones that should stand out, are the ones that had a very positive attitude, and they somehow touched a part of you. They made you feel like you could do something that you never could do before. They encouraged you. They gave you confidence. Those are the people that you aspire to be. I mean, think back to your childhood. Those are the teachers that you never forget, right? And that's, if you're a karate instructor or any type of martial arts instructor, that's the type of instructor you should aspire to be. Now, I know that some of you who are watching this episode might be old school, as we call it, and you come from the school of hard knocks, where if you didn't get your stances down, you got whacked or something like that. And I'm with you. I've been there, believe me. So is Mr. Roach. But I will tell you, although that does build character, and there is a place for that, the ones that stand out to me and the ones that actually changed me to become the person I am today and continue to get stronger are the ones that empowered me and gave me confidence and encouraged me. So keep that in the back of your mind when you're thinking about your teaching. So I'm not going to take over the whole episode today. I'd like to hear some of these other gentlemen speak. We'll come back, and I have a few other things I want to cover, but I'm going to hand it over to Mr. Roach. I'd like you to kind of share what you think on this topic.
All right, thank you, Sensei. I appreciate that. When you were talking about empowerment, I want to just mention that in my sociolinguistics class this past semester, there was a guy named E.G. Wenger, and I believe he was a sociologist, and I'm going to paraphrase something that he said. It was basically that power comes from a sense of belonging, and that was his theory. So I think that another aspect of empowerment, of course, comes from the leader, but also comes from creating a sense of belonging within a dojo or within a family of practitioners. And I think that that is definitely one thing that has helped me along the way, and is one thing that I feel also when I practice and train on my own, when I go to other countries, it's real important, and I feel the importance of having that sense of belonging to something. And of course, I believe that the instructor has an incredible impact on the rest of the students in creating that kind of environment where students can feel a sense of belonging and empowerment. But my experience lies more in being an assistant instructor and working together with the instructor in the front, or the master in the front. And one of my things, of course, one of the things that we talk about a lot here at the Marshall Way Network is that we need to be the example. That an example has a lot more power than just words, that actions speak louder than words, that we need to practice what we preach, as you said earlier, Sensei. And one thing that I think really helps with that is, of course, the instructor is the example. The assistant instructor can also be the example. But when you give the students occasionally, and when appropriate, the opportunity to lead something, whether it be just to count off during the stretches for little kids, or to have someone lead the stretches and the warm-ups in the beginning of a class, I think it does tremendous, it gives a tremendous amount of sort of cohesion to the group, and it helps students to start building their leadership skills and being comfortable being in a leadership position. And also, I know that there are a lot of instructors who are very sort of standoffish, and I think that that has a lot of value in certain situations. But I have found that the instructor that goes there with you and that interacts with you on a personal basis, whether it's when you're doing sparring, or the instructor or the assistant instructor who will go right next to you when you're doing something wrong and just stand at the end of that line and do the exercises right along with everyone. I've been in classes a lot of times where the energy just is not there. Everybody's had a long day. The kids just got out of school. They just don't have it. It's finals week, whatnot. And if this instructor stands in front of the class and yells at them, usually it has the opposite effect. But if the instructor gets into it with them, if the instructor goes into the front line with them and just goes through those drills and puts out those key eyes, and it really does something to bring up the level of energy in the class and start to really empower and push the students so that they get into the groove, so to speak. So as someone who's been an assistant instructor for quite a while, um, the one of the things that I like to do, of course, I tend to be a little bit of a micromanager, and I have to remind myself constantly to just kind of back away and go, okay, only one or two things, and that's it. But one of the things that I've noticed is that, especially with kids, they're always looking, always watching for who can I look at, who can I watch that I want to be like. They're always looking for that example. Adults are perhaps a little bit different. They have their own goals. They kind of have their own vision a little bit more. And when kids come in, they tend to be looking a little bit more for, okay, what is this exactly? What kind of person do I want to be? And so they'll be looking a lot of times at other kids in the class. And so when you can draw the attention to the students who are doing well in a particular activity, then what happens is everybody kind of zeroes in on that person and says, okay, that person's doing good. I want to do good like that person. And that can help to create that positive atmosphere and really pick up the energy level in a class. And then the other thing is, I've been in a lot of classes where I've been really, really tired, and in most of the East Asian arts, we use kiai or kihap, and I have found that when I'm really tired, if somebody makes me yell, or if I hear someone in the room just do a really loud kiai with each technique and push into it, then it really brings up the level of energy in that room again, and can really help other students to feel that energy. So, all of these things, in my mind, have been really, really helpful. I tend to be the kind of person who does a lot of micromanaging, but I like to get down and show them how to do things more than just telling them you need to do this or do that. So I'm much more of a kind of doer, a kind of hands-on person in many ways. So although each student has their own way of learning and their own style, and you want to come at it from as many angles as you like, I think that it's also important to acknowledge that we each have our own strengths and our own styles of teaching, and that we can really use those to enhance our teaching, the learning experience for our students. And then the other thing that I did want to talk about as well, in terms of examples and in terms of empowerment, is I think that it's always beneficial to have books available at the dojo, or to have resources available for students that they can use on the time when they're outside of the dojo to reconnect with the art, especially for beginning students who don't have that routine, who don't have that practice established, and especially for young kids, a lot of times even fiction books like The Peaceful Warrior or Trithong Dang's books, those kind of stories can really lighten up a child's imagination and really give them vision and power. At least that's what I experienced myself when I discovered the book collection in the dojo. That was it. I was sold, and I really got a lot from just the stories and anecdotes that I heard other instructors talking about. People from the old days talking about, oh, remember when this happened or when that happened. So I think that stories and books have a huge impact on being able to provide students with resources so that they're enthusiastic about the training and that they understand, as you talked about before, Sensei, that they understand the why of, okay, this is what I'm doing. I'm not just walking through the motions. You know, this is an ancient tradition, and I'm part of this. Again, the belonging that is created from that. So I think that all of these things are so integral in creating that kind of atmosphere of belonging, and also empowering students and giving them a sense of, yes, I can do this, I can push my limits. Even when I'm tired, I can come to class and I can leave feeling great because the instructor and some other students in class really pushed me to bring up my energy level and to exceed and excel. I believe we're moving on to Hanshi here.
Okay. Hey, thank you so much, Mr. Roach. That's some very good insight, and you know, the whole idea of books in the dojo is such a beautiful thing, because I know, and that's probably something that Dr. Leach can talk about too. Is he has a deep love for books, and he has a huge collection that has really helped inspire and motivate how we teach in our dojo here in Branson. So I'm going to hand it over to Dr. Leach and see what kinds of things he has to add on empowering students and instructors.
Okay, thank you, Sean. Over the years, I've found that classes are made up of individuals, totally different people, and each person has their own reason for being there. They have different abilities. Some people do the right thing the first time, every time, and some people require a lot of work. Many people are there in karate to try to gain this internal power that they feel perhaps weak, or they don't feel confident, and they look to karate for confidence. And I don't know how many times I've taught people how to fall, but in every class there's someone who says, I can't do a somersault. And by the end of the class, we've got them doing a somersault. And the reaction on their face, the empowerment there by actually doing something that they couldn't believe that they believed that they couldn't do, and have accomplished it, is something else. And the next class, that somersault becomes easier and easier, and soon they're doing things that they never thought they could do. These are the kinds of things that I think build confidence in people, and I think by empowerment we're also talking about just building that confidence. The system we teach has that inbuilt ability to bring about an increased level of confidence as you get through the program, and as you start working your way up through the ranks. You become more proficient at what you're doing. You can do a lot of things that you never thought you could do. People that couldn't kick end up kicking over their heads. Some people never even get that far, and they're happy with just being able to get their foot up waist high. But every person is different. If I knew the one thing that I could empower everyone every time, I'd probably be the leader of the world in about 4 weeks. There's no way that I could I can reach that point with people. Everybody's different, and we have to, as instructors, we have to select each an individual person and find out what helps motivate them and what helps them work better in their program. Now, one thing, and I think this was mentioned by Mr. Rose, that getting on the tatami and working directly with the student is extremely important. You can't teach from a chair. You have to get on. You have to show the person how to do it. You have to be on your game. You have to be able to do the techniques that you're teaching, and you have to show the student how to do it. Then you have to be able to help them correct the things that they need to do to improve their technique, and they do learn how to do it. And another thing is, I think the instructor has to play the part of the uke, that they need to have, they need the chance to throw the instructor. And I think that's important to allow them to make that contact with me, and it helps me too. You know, if a student does a lousy throw, it's hard. It's hard falling. If they do an excellent throw, it's very easy falling. But when I teach that student how to do that throw, and they throw me, I can tell them better what needs to be done to correct their technique until they get a better throw. And it's amazing that the first time a person accomplishes a basic hip throw on either me or another student, the look on their face, they know it's good. It feels good. They know it looked good. It just felt the way it should, and this is the confidence that they get, and this, in fact, is the empowerment. And the system is built to empower people at each and every stage of their training. Each level has its, we've talked about before, goals and things, and the goals are important. But reaching these goals also is a form of personal empowerment, because as they accomplish these things, the things that they looked at, our whole system is written down, so we give them the information they have to do, and they look at that and they say, you know, I'm never going to be able to do that. But they can, and they do, and we teach them, and they progress, and as they do progress, they start to get this confidence and working with each other. I think classes and groups of people tend to feed off of each other's confidence and empowerment as well. I've seen large groups of people stay with it and stay together. They start together, they stay together, they move through the system together because they work well together, and they empower each other. And this is something else that we need to think about too, is the empowerment that the students give to one another. It's just not me that does the empowerment. They're a big part of that. Also helping students, having students of a higher level, but not instructors, teaching lower level students as they go as part of their program helps empower them too, because if they can get the ideas across to another lower level student, then they have a certain amount of confidence that they know that that particular technique well. And sometimes, and I know this happens all the time when I teach, some things come out of my mouth that I don't even know that I really knew. And it's just common sense that this particular thing should be this particular way. And if it is that way, then it works. Um, I also find when I let these students teach, by the way, I'm watching very closely because I want to know what the student is teaching, and if they don't have the correct technique down, I need to step in and help that student get that technique correct so that they can pass on the correct knowledge. Um, and this also helps them uh, fill in some of the gaps that they have in a particular given technique. And it gives them a better understanding, and when they come out with a better understanding, they come out with more confidence and they come out more empowered. So I'll turn it back to you, Sensei Boric, and you can move from there.
All right.
Thank you.
Thank you, Master Leach. That was really good, and I appreciate the insight that you give from your experience and in helping others so that they can be the next legacy of instructors. I think that's so powerful because when you think about it, as a martial arts instructor, you literally are helping the next generation of martial artists to become teachers. So, if you are doing a disservice by disrespecting your students or treating them, like a drill sergeant, then you may be producing an entirely different generation of martial artists that may not be the best thing. So you have to really watch your words. And I wanted to kind of dive into that now, and that is, what are some words that you should be eliminating from your vocabulary when you're teaching? All right, there actually are words that you should not use, and I'll give you an example. The word wrong. How many times have you seen a student have the opposite leg forward or the opposite arm forward, or they're doing something in there and it's not how you would like it to be done? Rather than saying something like wrong leg or wrong arm, which is a negative word, that you're telling them they're doing it wrong. That's negative. Change that. One simple word change can mean the world of difference. So instead, change the word to the word switch. So instead of saying wrong leg, just say switch legs. Notice the difference. Notice the difference in just that tone. When you hear switch legs, it doesn't mean you're wrong. It just means, hey, I need to switch legs. So, if you're saying the word wrong right now, I encourage you to change that. The other one is the word don't. When I hear the word don't, I think of, my mother or my father as a young child saying, don't do that, if you're getting in trouble for something, right? I don't know if that brings up that feeling in anyone else, but I try not to use the word don't. Rather, I'll say, try it this way, look at it this way, or, hey, let me show you something. Isn't that a little more positive than saying, don't do that? I think it is. Another word, and this is more for students themselves, although I've heard some instructors say this as well, is the word can't or cannot. Can't to me is a bad word. It's a four-letter word. I mean, I really, you can ask any one of my students because they know that if they say the word can't, I'm on them like a hot poker. Okay, because to me, can't, not only is it a negative word, but it also basically shuts your mind down. When you use the word can't, you have just told your entire body that you physically cannot do it. Okay? And there's a quote that I've heard that I thought was really good. It says, if you think you can, you can. If you think you can't, think again. And I don't know who actually said the quote, otherwise I would tell you that, but look that one up. I'm sure you can find where it originally came from. But it's so true. Your mind, and all of you who've been in the martial arts for a while, you know this, that it all starts right here, between the ears, right? All of your success in the martial arts comes from your mental motivation and your belief that you can truly do something. Your body may not be there yet. You may want to do a front flip with a back flying kick, but your body may not be there yet, but your mind is there. And if you can get a student's mind to the point where they believe that they truly can do it, they may not be able to do it right now, but with practice they'll be able to do it, then you as an instructor have just motivated someone. You have motivated them to have the greatest thing, and that's belief and hope and desire that they can do it. Okay, so those are just a few words and how you can flip them around. And so what should you do if you hear the word can't? I tell my students all the time, I say, we do not use the word can't. We use the word show me, teach me, I don't know how, or I won't. And I tell them if you use the word won't, then you need to turn around and exit my dojo. Because that tells me that you're in the wrong place and this isn't for you. Because I want students that are willing to learn, and that's really the main part of being a good student in anything, not just the martial arts, is a willingness to learn. And if you have that willingness to learn, and that comes from humility and realizing you don't know it all, you can be taught literally anything. So I also want to give you a few phrases. So I gave you a few words to eliminate and another word that you could use or phrase you can use. I want to give you some phrases that are empowering. These are phrases that you can use every day in your practice that'll help motivate just about anyone. Okay? The first one is very powerful, and that is, I believe in you. I mean, when you have somebody that's discouraged in class, they're just not getting it, maybe they had a hard day, you go up to them and say, I believe in you. And look them in the eye and really mean it. And you would be surprised at how much that lights up somebody's eyes when they realize that somebody believes in them, because they may have lost belief in themselves on whether or not they can do something. But if you, as their instructor or an assistant, can come up and give them a big smile and say, I believe in you. You can do this. Now you've just empowered that person and you've given them a little bit of hope so that they can take the next step and continue in their training. All right, here's another one that really helps, and that is, how many times have you heard somebody who said, maybe they have a bellyache when they come to class, or maybe they're sore from a really hard workout, and they're like, oh, this is really hurting me, and they're complaining. If you get somebody who's a complainer, this is a phrase that I like to use that works every time, and that is, you say, I like how you come to class even when you're not at 100%. And just by saying that simple phrase, all of a sudden it's like a light bulb comes on and they realize, oh wow, Sensei thinks it's awesome that I'm motivated to come to class even when I'm not all the way there. And instead of commiserating with them, because that's our human nature. If somebody says they're hurt, or they don't feel good, or whatever excuse they make for that day, if you say, oh well, I'm sorry about that, if you say something like that, it's kind of flippant and it kind of gives them permission to keep complaining. Whereas on the other hand, if you say, I like how you fill in the blank, I like how you keep going and you keep pushing through even when it's hard. I like how you show up for class even when you didn't want to be here. I like how you encourage that other student in class by being here today. You can fill in the blank with whatever you want. Another one that is also motivating is if you have somebody that maybe hasn't really accomplished what you would like for them to accomplish for the day, you might find one small thing that they are doing right, and look at that and then give them a compliment and start it off with, you always work so hard. Just use the word you always, and it has to be followed by something positive. So you might say, you always stretch really well, or you always ki really loud. I like that about you. Or you always show up to class on time. Whatever it is that's positive. And by doing that, what you're doing is you're giving them something positive that maybe they didn't realize that they did well, and you just showed them that they always do that, and you've noticed it. And now you've encouraged them and you've empowered them to keep going and doing more of that positive behavior versus the negative behavior that they may have been doing earlier. Okay, so these are just a few phrases that can be really magical when you start incorporating them into your teaching and into your assisting. All right, and I saw Mr. Rose there, and then he jumped off, so I don't know if he lost his connection or not. I was going to invite him on here. While we're waiting, I want to give you a few others, and that is a lot of times you'll have like one student who's on their game, and they're like really motivated in class, and like everybody else, or it appears that way, everybody else is just kind of him-ha. You know, maybe they're just not on their game that day. What I like to do is, rather than, you know, tell everybody, come on, let's count, or come on, get motivated, and be that cheerleader, I pick out the one that's doing right, and I'll compliment them in front of everybody. Like if somebody's counting really well, like they're holding the cadence, they're counting, they're key-eyeing, I'll say, great counting, Joey, or, you know, what, I'm just making up a name. Great counting, or great counting, Mr. Rose, or way to do exercises, you know, Mr. Leach, or Dr. Leach, you know, way to influence other people, Mr. Roach. And so now you've got, you know, motivation because the other students see that and they hear that, and so then it's like, again, it's like magic. All the other students start counting right away after I compliment somebody else, and so it's really neat how that works. So I want to share just a few more tips too. And one of the things that I started doing when I first opened my doors in my dojo, once I got students that got up in rank, I have an assistant training program that I put together, and this assistant training program basically goes through the expectations that I have for assistants, and it also gives some positive tips to help them in their journey to becoming a future instructor. So one of the things that I teach all my assistants is to use what I call the compliment sandwich. And a compliment sandwich means that if you see someone making a mistake, then first of all, praise them for working hard and for, you know, being in class or whatever it is that they're doing. Praise them first, then correct them, and then praise them again. So that's your little sandwich. So it's praise, correct, and praise. And this has really helped. It helps a lot with students who are maybe struggling. Instead of constantly getting corrected, you find something positive, then you correct them, and then you tell them something positive again. Okay? The other thing is, if you see somebody that continues to make mistakes and is not quite getting something, you know, correct them once, you know, with that compliment sandwich. Then, you know, let them try it. Don't keep correcting them and showing them and correcting them and showing them. Just leave them alone for a little bit and let them work it out. Some people, some adults, some children, it takes them a little longer to pick up certain techniques. Be aware of that. Let them work it out. And then, you know, follow up later on. If you see they're still not getting it, correct them again if necessary with that compliment sandwich. And then the thing I say is don't correct them more than 3 times in one class, because once you start overcorrecting a student, it can really be discouraging, and they will lose motivation for coming to class if they feel like they're constantly being corrected. So really be careful and realize that some people just take longer to get there. And once you do that, you'll find that you have better retention with your students, and you also have much happier students who are more willing to try new things because they know that they're going to not get constantly corrected on something they haven't learned yet. The other thing is, don't overpraise. This is something that I've seen in some dojos, and that is, you know, if somebody is doing something well, give them some encouragement, but don't keep telling them great job over and over again if they're not doing it properly. It's possible that you're telling them that they're doing a great job, but in reality, they're really not there. You're just trying to motivate them, and that's kind of counterproductive. Because if somebody thinks, well, you're always telling me I'm doing a good job, so then I don't need to be corrected, it can cause problems later on, because it'll be much more difficult to correct something that you've overpraised. So just, you know, give out compliments, but don't give them out too often. And I would use the rule of threes again. You know, if you're giving out compliments, I wouldn't give more than 2 or 3 per class, and make sure that they're really valid, that you really have examined them and they are doing it well before you compliment. And I know that Mr. Roach kind of alluded to this, but there are different learning styles. And when you're teaching, you need to remember all 3. So what are those learning styles? Well, the first is visual. Some people are very visual learners. They can see something and they can instantly pick it up. Okay? The second is auditory. Okay? Auditory, they need to hear it. They need to hear how to do something. Or, you know, maybe there's somebody that actually has to listen to something before they can even do it. If they have the visual going on without somebody speaking on how to do it, they may not even be able to pick it up. And then finally is the kinetic. So the third is kinetic. Kinetic means they have to do it themselves before it sinks in on how it's to be done. So if they are visual, you should show them. Show them how to do it. Physically get up there, show them exactly how to do what it is you want them to do. If they're auditory, tell them, you know, walk them through verbally exactly the steps that you'd like them to take. And then finally, kinetic. Have them do it. Give them some time after you've shown them and spoken to them how to do it. Give them some time to actually do it. Now you're probably thinking, okay, well, how do I know if they're auditory or visual or kinetic learners? Well, you really don't unless, you know, they know. Some people just know what they are. So what I try to do is I try to incorporate all 3 when I teach. So I actually have a chalkboard in my dojo, and a lot of times I will write something up on the board so that my visual learners can see that. And then I also speak it out. I say whatever it is that I write so that they hear it, and then we do it together as a group so that everybody's doing it kinetically. And so try to incorporate all 3 when you're teaching or assisting. All right, I think that about covers the topics that I had. I'm going to open it back up and see if there are any final words that we have here from Mr. Rose and Dr. Leach.
Thank you, Sensei. While you were talking, it made me think about coming back to, I had mentioned a little bit about the ki-eyes and the ki-hops before, and I don't want to get too metaphysical about this, but I think that vibration definitely can have a huge impact on motivation. I mean, when you think about the power of music, for example, you know, if I wake up in the morning and sometimes I'm dragging or something, then I'll just turn on one of my favorite morning songs, and it really starts to get me going. Yeah. Or, you know, when I'm driving to work in the car in the morning, I'm feeling a little bit drowsy, turn on that music, and it really helps to pick me up. I'm not suggesting that you bring a boombox into the dojo, but of course there's things that you can utilize that aren't just words, but they're ki-eyes and ki-hops. And in fact, I really like the idea of having a drum in the dojo, because I think when the instructor or when another student goes up there and hits that drum, that vibration carries out, and I think it can put something into the student and motivate them to move just a little bit quicker, or put a little bit more power into what they're doing, or a little bit more focus. And it certainly helps me a great deal. So along with that, in my experience, having a drum or doing the ki-eyes and the ki-hops helps just a tremendous amount to uplift. But I think it's important to be careful, because sometimes, of course, the original use of a ki-eye or a ki-hop is not to encourage your opponent to to attack harder and stronger originally. And I think that a drum and the beat on a drum can be very intimidating as well in some ways. So, you know, if the instructor gets mad and they just start beating on the drum, then that vibration really carries out and everybody can feel it and go, whoa, I don't like this. So, of course, you've got to be a little bit careful with that. But I think that if the intention is there, and if you're using those key eyes and those key hops and using a drum or perhaps a gong after a meditation or something like that, it can help tremendously to bring up the awareness and the energy in the room.
Great.
And I think,
thanks, Mr. Roach. That's really a great concept, and you're right. I remember one of the dojos that actually you and I were at. They had the drum, and it was such a great thing when that drum came into the dojo because it wasn't there before, and then all of a sudden the drum beat started going, and it was so motivating. It kept us in cadence, and I really enjoyed that. So that's great. Thanks for bringing that up. Well, hey, I see Mr. Rose is there. Mr. Rose, all right, can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you, ma'am.
All right. Did you have anything you'd like to add to the topic on empowering words and actions?
Well, honestly, I missed a lot of it. I'm going to have to watch the replay myself to see what you guys have even talked about. But I got a little bit off of when I got on earlier, and if my phone happens to die again, I'm sorry. I may not make it back. But I'll try to throw this out there. You guys both, I listened to Dr. Leach and you, Ms. Borch. You guys both mentioned legacy. Legacy is something I've always found very important. And when I first started out, and I mention that to people, sometimes they say, well, what, you want your name on some big organization or something like that. And I said, no, it's not like that. It's not about me. It's a legacy of a way of life that can pass through me. That's actually what's important to me as far as being a teacher. So as part of that, we're one of those schools. We have it's not like quite like a lot of them I've seen before, but we use what we call a leadership program, and in reality, it's not really a separate class. We have a class time set up that anybody can come to that we call leadership. That's kind of a time where we let some of our higher ranked students, more than in regular class, kind of take control and lead drills, and we find it helps with anxiety and lots of other things like that. Plus, there's nothing quite like having to teach a technique to somebody else to really start to understand all the little inner workings about it and what you have to do different with somebody taller than you or somebody shorter than you or whatever the case is in some instances. So we use this within this leadership program, and we kind of do a assistant instructor program and stuff like that too. And it doesn't cost any extra. It's just something that students that want to do it or that need it, sometimes I push some students into it, get a chance to kind of be on the other side of the fence for a little bit. But one of the things we talk about, and this relates to attitude and dealing with people and just a work environment, is we talk about class management skills and rapport building skills. And a lot of you guys were talking about the same things we use under those skills. So for example, reinforcing positive behavior. And I know that sounds like something you'd see in a parenting magazine, and true enough, but it works really, really well on the mat too, to not just be looking or saying something on something negative going on, but to be constantly praising the good behavior, the good voice, the good key ops, the good parts of techniques, this, that, and the other. And we always talk about that when dealing with other people, reinforcing positive behavior, and yet giving specific praise. That's another one we talk about. So when you do praise something, give very specific praise. That kind of leads into another one where we talk about positive correction rather than criticism. So how we talk about it is the sandwich concept. So if you're going to correct something, tell them something positive they did about what they did, and then give them the thing they can work on, what we call the negative, and then end with a positive of how it'll get there if they keep practicing or you've seen the improvement that they've made on their practicing and things like that. That's another one of what we call our class management skills, our student management skills. And I know Dr. Leach spoke on a subject that we call the concept of personal victory. He was talking about somersaults. I remember catching that part of the conversation and getting someone to do something as simple as that by the end of a class. But then let them feel like, and I see this a lot of time with instructors, is they'll kind of work with someone for a long time on something that may seem simple to them, and then when that person gets it, they're very excited, but the instructor's like, oh yeah, you finally got it. Let them be excited. Build that excitement with them. If you're excited for them, then they're going to be more excited for themselves, which goes into another one of our class management skills we talk about. As a teacher, you're the one that is setting the mood. You're setting the entire tone of the class and the students in front of you, whether that's one student or a group or the entire class. It's how you talk, how you act, and how you present yourself that sets the entire mood for everybody else within that class. And I know I didn't catch what you guys were talking about with drums and stuff, but we use music a lot in our classes. We generally don't have the quiet background too often unless we're doing some meditation things or something like that. But when we're doing our drills, we usually will have some music going. And the idea behind all of these basically is to create a positive climate for people. People always are willing to try harder and work harder when they think they're doing well with something, and it's easier for a lot of people, even if they do let their ego get involved, to take correction when they still feel like they're doing something well. And those kind of things, using personal approach for those kind of things, like I think Ms. Borch mentioned making eye contact, saying things like, I believe in you, you know, and stuff like that. I think all those things are really, really, really important, and always giving feedback to students. And I talk about that with our assistants and stuff, and I say, or even any of our leadership people, I say, anytime you're with a partner, thank them, tell them what they did well, maybe help them with a little correction here and there or something like that. But always be willing to throw the compliments out there individually. So even if you're teaching a group, you know, don't let the fury of getting involved in teaching a group take away from your ability to walk over to one student in particular and say, hey, that was incredible. It's incredible where you came from and where you're going to. So we kind of do that as part of a special program for patches and assistant teaching things, stuff like that. The last thing I think I'll add to this is when you are teaching, and I think it just comes as a pet peeve of mine, when I was younger and different schools I would go into and schools I would look for when I was looking for something in particular in a school, I always looked for a teacher that was real. Let me put it that way. I think we've all met those teachers who somehow put themselves as almost unrealistic in their skills and skill sets and things like that. And me personally, I always took the approach as a teacher of teaching with humility. And what I mean by that is, you know, I'm not afraid to mess up in front of my students. I'm not afraid to get beat by one of my students. That happens regularly, and in fact, it makes me very proud because it makes me feel like I'm doing something right with them. Don't be afraid to, you know, admit when you don't know something. If someone asks you a question, don't be afraid to admit you don't know it. Just say, I don't know, but I'm going to try to find some people who can tell me the answer to that. So you can both get the answer, because you're not growing as a teacher or as a student yourself if you're just, you know, making up answers or blowing hot air all the time, as if you know things that maybe you really don't know that well. So I always say, you know, when it comes to teaching, don't be afraid to, I'm not saying be hard on yourself, but don't be afraid to constantly be reevaluating your own skills, and don't be afraid to admit and see your own weaknesses and admit when there's something that you're not great at, but you're always working for it. And that can inspire that same working mentality in all of your students. If I tell I got students that can do things I can't, if I tell them, hey, you know, that's fantastic that you're doing that, and I know I just said can't. That's a bad word in my training facility too. I do understand I just said that, but I always like to say, you know, hey, I've been working on doing something like that too, and I may fall flat on my face, but I'll go out there and show them I can try it, and show them I'll try it too, and I'm not afraid to get out there and do it with them, even if it's something I don't know anything about. I've got some gymnasts in class that are always messing around with different things. They've actually taught me how to do a back handspring now. I'm really happy about that. But yeah, that way you can learn stuff from your students too. Your students got different backgrounds, some of them, and some of them are going to know other things. So again, teach with humility, you know, and don't be afraid to, you know, you talk about drill sergeant. You made the comment about the drill sergeant teacher a little while back. Yeah, every teacher has to be that way sometimes, but don't be afraid to every once in a while joke with your students too. I know some of the best classes I've ever taught were ones where I just opened up and I would allow myself to joke with my students even though we weren't supposed to be talking or whatever, you know, things like that, and you know, allow them to tease me and I'll tease them about it. All good-natured, but it builds a rapport, it builds a better connection with your students. They feel more closely connected to you when they can see you as being human as well, and they can see you trying and struggling and yes, occasionally failing the same way that they do on the floor. And then it makes them feel like you know maybe a little bit more about how they feel than they want to admit that you might know. So I feel like that's very important, and I talk to all my assistants and instructors and leadership people about that. You know, don't be too proud about your own skills. Never be too proud to back up and reevaluate yourself. and your skill sets, and never be afraid to admit you don't know something. Never be afraid to admit you are wrong about something. I couldn't tell you how many times I said something in class, and I could have swore I had it, and then I find out otherwise. And I'll go up to the class, I'll say, hey, sorry guys, I may have given you some bad information. Let me retract that. And I think it's those kind of things that help build that rapport and build that respect with your students when they see you mess up and try to do the right thing and keep working at it, and they see you show your perseverance and stuff like that, then they're more likely to follow that. You know, that lead by example thing. So they're more likely to follow you in that way. And you know, as I said, a lot of it just comes down to trying to be positive. And I know you already mentioned a lot of phrases or words not to use necessarily when you teach it, and I'm not going to lie, I let some slip from time to time. I've used a few of those words myself. But, you know, just try to, I always say, if you're going to say something that has a negative connotation to it, at least try to say it in a joking manner or a lighthearted manner. But for the most part, always try to keep your corrections positive and keep everybody else upbeat and positive, and let them know when they fall that you have fallen too, and you're still not afraid to fall, trying new things for yourself. I had an interesting workout the other day where we had a under 6-year-old class. Not very many people showed up. So instead of really doing the whole class, we just had like 2 other people there. They started working on back bends and things like that. So I started working on stuff that I'd been working on at the same time they were doing that. And I started noticing without even any instruction, they were working harder just because I was there beside them working on something, and they were seeing me fall, and they were seeing me get back up and try it again, and so they kept doing the same thing. So I guess that's all I had to add. Sorry if I've kind of overlaid what someone else has already spoken about, and again, I'm sorry for being late. So I'll throw it back over to you, Mrs. Borch.
Thank you, Mr. Rose. That was great. I really like what you said about, as an instructor, being willing to admit when you're wrong and that you made a mistake, because to me that shows a truly humble instructor, somebody who shows humility and honor, and that's what it's all about. And sometimes it can be hard to eat your own crow, you know, to realize that you really messed up and you did the technique wrong or you said something incorrectly, but it does make you stronger, and it shows that you're human, and students can relate to human. They can't always relate to somebody who feels that they are, you know, above making mistakes. So, you know, laugh it off, and they say that, you know, and I know there's a quote out there somewhere, and I'm going to butcher it, but there's a part of it that I really love, and that is, I think it actually came from Benjamin Franklin, and that is, you know that you're successful the day that you can have a good laugh at your mistakes. And I know I probably butchered it, but just to laugh at your own mistakes and to realize that you are human and that you are here to help inspire others, and pick yourself back up by your bootstraps and get out there and do the best you can every day. So I want to thank each one of you for being here today on the episode 8. And we actually have a big surprise for you. We're going to be doing another episode next Friday. We have a special guest, a capoeira instructor who's going to be, we're going to be interviewing him. So be sure to tune in next Friday, same time, same place, and you'll get to hear a little bit about the martial way as it is in the capoeira world. So join us then. Until next time, have a wonderful evening. Take care.